Почитуван поранешен председател Иванов, почитувани лидери, драги пријатели. Голема чест ми е да бидам со вас денеска. Голема чест ми е да бидам со вас денеска на Форумот за културна дипломатија, на мојот голем пријател и колега, поранешниот македонски председател Ѓорѓе Иванов. Темата на годишниот форум е мали држави, како нашата, големо влијание. Го немаме се уште. Справување со глобалните предизвици преку заеднички мултилатерализам и културна дипломатија. Ја имаме. За мене, ова е една од најважните теми во овој момент, кога во светот се соочуваме со војни. Обединетите нации настанаа како антиколонијален, но и мировен проект. Дури добија и Нобелова награда за мир. Но се случува војна. И Европската унија, или ако сакате Европската заедница најпрво, не случајно заедница за јаглен и челик, настана како мировен проект. Но се случува војна и тоа на почвата на Европа. Дилемата пред која се наоѓаме е како да изградиме лидери за мир меѓу државите, но и мир со природата, бидејќи јас честопати велам дека не ме инспирира во мојата професија само Жан-Жак Русо со неговиот општествен договор, туку и Мишел Сера со неговиот природен договор. Ние сме во војна и со природата и војната е однапред изгубена. Значи, ние сме спремни на суицид за жал. Зошто мислам дека треба да изградиме лидери за мир? Бидејќи денеска се уште како да доминираат следбениците на Тукидид, на Макијавели, на Клаузевиц. Замислете, во 21. век постојано слушам силните го прават тоа што можат, а слабите тоа што мораат. И постојано ме предупредуваат дека не сваќам дека реал политиката е таа што владее со светот и дека мојот идеализам е чуден. А јас мислам дека треба да се облагороди реал политиката со идеализам. Зошто кога велам идеализам, јас мислам на право, на правда, на морал и на етика. Да, го споменав Тукидид и Пелопонеските војни, се разбира, во најпознатиот диалог за моќта, но и за правдата, да ве подсетам уште еднаш, тој вели: правдата е збор кој што има вредност во расправиите меѓу луѓето само кога двете страни имаат подеднаква сила, а јас реков ке зборувам во името на...
I will speak on behalf of the small countries. In the other cases, strong countries, as I said, do what they can, and we, the weak countries, what we must. When we face the political credo of Machiavelli, once again, I am faced with one thesis that the will justifies the means. But I know that many fulfillment of goals were achieved with a very aspect. I am more like a Kant than like Machiavelli, and for me, the highest goal is and will remain the human being. I mentioned Clausewitz. Can you imagine that the war is a continuation of the politics, but by applying other means? The consequences of such a politics are catastrophic, and we see such results, like scenes from Picasso's Guernica. and I am ashamed of what I'm seeing on a daily basis. We are witnesses of daily escalation, bloodshed, wars without any justification. In order to offer an alternative of the power of Machiavellism, militarism, I think that we need to be inspired by the people of peace, by moral and ethical leaders who have proven with their words and deeds that also by applying peaceful, non-violent means, just growth can be achieved. These architects of peace created the United Nations, as well as the European Union, the Council of Europe, and many other peace projects that, by ensuring legal equality between the nations, aim to curb the power of the great and to protect the small nations. It is precisely this legal equality that is the prerequisite to achieving peace and security, but also human rights and sustainable development. I think that they point out that politics doesn't have to be a Byzantine game, a Game of Thrones, a House of Cards, a ruthless zero-sum game, but can be, as I sometimes say, the art of the possible, which means a creative way of finding solutions to the challenges faced. I am aware that today what Harold Laszlo defines like politics is who, when, and how wins. Unfortunately, I will refer to some examples on the other possibilities for politics. The first is Dag Hammarskjöld, the former Secretary General of the United Nations, who said that our work for peace must begin in the private world of every one of us, because every one of us is a microcosmos. To be able to build a world without fear for men, we must first of all be fearless. To build a world of justice, we must be just. And how can we fight for freedom if we are not free in our minds? And I indeed quote Tikhon, who very often says that the mind is quicker than the light. How can we ask others to sacrifice if we are not ready to do so, to give our sacrifice? The second example I would like to refer to is Nelson Mandela. Yes, with peaceful means, he fought for the end of the apartheid, but also for justice and reconciliation in South Africa. This is the real inspiration. The third example is our Macedonian revolutionary Goce Delchev, who said that he understands the world as a cultural, not a military competition between the nations. In my opinion, and I'm not sure whether you would agree with me, especially my colleague, I ask myself whether Goce Delchev is the founder of the Macedonian cultural diplomacy. And this leads me to the last topic of this event, the Cultural Diplomacy Forum, initiated by my colleague, the President Ivanov. Last year, as a member of the Parliament, I had the opportunity to participate in the first forum, and I was impressed by the speech of the speakers. That was the speech that I'm missing, and that was the speech that I wanted to listen to. In my opinion, culture is the most powerful resource of small nations. And very often I say that there is no greater investment than the one in education, in science, in culture and sports, to because in these fields, very often there are no small and big countries. In this respect, I would like to paraphrase the Macedonian poet and diplomat Arthur Shopov when he says that in culture there are no highly and moderately developed countries and developing countries. Culture gives equal dignity to those who are different. Why? Because big cultural regions are not indifferent to how small cultural environments treat them with their new and fresh perspectives. This summer, I will be visited by a colleague of mine from the Columbia University, Professor Emeritus Philip James. We met within one project on legal clinical education, and what he was astonished of was how in the simulations we run, otherwise legal clinical education means to make your students aware that they should not only just study, but even in the first year of studies to defend, because in the United States, the legal professors can also be solicitors, and the project was with the with the poor students who were not only learning skills, legal skills, but also empathy. This was something that was most important. And to be honest, when my speech ended, and the first person who approached me was my colleague and asked me, and why he did so, because after 7 or 8 years of collaboration, he asked me at certain point, very strange, you are not experienced in the legal clinical education, but you have interesting ideas, and most probably that was something new for us. And we acted like Socrates did. And I stopped being a teacher, but I started learning. And when you learn, then when you study, then you are dedicated, curious, and probably that was the reason why we were accredited as the best clinic in Central and Southeastern Europe. And we gained a reputation. So what I want to say is that it all refers to one conclusion, that small cultural environments like the Macedonian one, instead of growing in width, they rise in height. And I think that such future is the real future. Sometimes, even from small countries, you will listen to amazing ideas, because most probably their path is harder, and in such circumstances the thought is inspired and great solutions are found. So I think that I am right. Hardly anyone in the world knows the names of the Macedonian politicians, but many have heard of the unique 7/8 musical rhythm of the spectacular Macedonissimo Simon Pečersky, of the movies of Milcha Mančevski, but also of the plays of Goran Stefanovski, the roles of Nikola Ristanovski, the novels of Vinsterova and Venka Andonovsky, the songs of Yahya Kemal, the masterpieces of Martinovsky. You will be able to see them, Chemersky, Tundovsky, Koleshy. Here, I would add the legacy of the old Slavic educators and Macedonian revivalists, of the builders, of the wood carvers, of the icon painters, the films of the Manaki brothers, and the stories such as that of Mustafa Kemal Atatürk and the beautiful Eleni Karinta. On 19th of May, on the day of youth and sports of Turkey, the day when the battle for national liberation started, to the students of the Kemal Atatürk School in Gostivar, I told exactly this story, the Thessaloniki story, the love idea of Kemal and Eleni. Nobody asks when love is in question about ethnicity. Love knows no borders. In the brilliant study, the Macedonian genius through the ages of the Italian scholar Giorgio Murigiani, I very often give as a present to foreign politicians because this book starts with the message of William Gladstone, the letter to the Byron's friends. Why not Macedonia to Macedonians? This is not something that I have written, but it is written by William Gladstone. And after him, another personality that I admire, Bernard Shaw, wrote that liberal is the person who believes in Finland, Ireland, or Macedonia. And again, this is not something that I have written, but it is written by Bernard Shaw. So these brilliant people, in my opinion, give examples that are close to me. And this is something that I very often call that every nation, every country has something like this as mine has. It is the Macedonian cultural renaissance, and I assume that you have seen in the cabinet the painting of Chamersky about Jesus Christ, inspired by the very small church here, St. Panteleimon, where for the first time you can receive expression, feelings, because Mother Mary is crying over Jesus. All the frescoes are filled with plastic figures because expressions, facial emotions are not included. I was very pleased in Florence when I was. When I admired Giotto, I know that there is inspiration even before the period of Renaissance in some other world. And because when they came from Constantinople, they felt free and started painting the emotions. So cultural diplomacy builds bridges. And in my opinion, these bridges are resilient, resistant to daily political schemes, populism, demagogy, and manipulation. I think there is no greater success of a state and culture than to have admirers, but also to have lovers, and among other members of the nation, among the other religions, among the other people. And I think think of the famous Japanese opera singer. I don't know if you have heard him singing, Maestro Kotetsu, who fell in love with Macedonian music. All of the foreign Slavics and Macedonians, participants of the Otricano Festival or the Struga Poetry Events. Moreover, very soon he will be awarded the famous Japanese architect, and also Kibirovsky. Why? The brutalism in Corbusianism, which can be seen all around Skopje, in post-earthquake Skopje, or if you have visited the Museum of Contemporary Art, you can see there Pablo Picasso and Salvador Dali, and of many other artists who uh, were involved in the reconstruction of Skopje. The cultural spirit is even more important than the building. Culture creates common symbols of recognition that are respected and go beyond We must be aware that the politicians are ephemeral flora, and all this goes beyond the mandate of the politician. In order to fulfill its enormous potential for connecting people, culture needs to be given its rightful place in diplomacy. So I will provide here one personal example. Most of you know that due to the bilateralization of our European integration, which leads to standards, we are once again dropped on our path and seeking with cynicism. Uh, I will say I'm not aware whether we are waiting for Godel, but he's an incredible marathon in conditions of bilateral relations that are very tense. I was looking for a solution of creating an ambience in which we could decently talk, and I found the solution in music, although I was laughed at. At the last year's night of the evening in Skopje, I attended the wonderful performance of Wagner's opera The Valkyrie. And after that, I received an open invitation for a return visit of the Macedonian National Opera, which performed in Sofia with Verdi's opera Nabucco. And of course, I accepted the invitation, and in Skopje, the Bulgarian opera faced a delirium, admiration. But in Sofia, our opera also faced ecstasies of screams, of applause. My comment to the President Radev was, we do not represent ourselves, but our citizens. And you have seen the Bulgarian citizens, their opinion on the Macedonian art. And I have also seen the Macedonian citizens, how, what kind of feelings they have towards the Bulgarian art. Isn't it logical that we should follow them? And what happened? Last year, the director of the Bulgarian opera, famous Raman Kartalov, professor, academician, published a book. I will show you the role of the opera in diplomacy. The next part is dedicated to the Macedonian-Bulgarian story. And maybe nationalists hate the pictures with me, with him, with the citizens, but I'm inspired and I think that they are wonderful. 2 days before your arrival here, or 3, don't take me for granted, in our Philharmonic, we received the Thessaloniki Philharmonic. Ravel, but his Greek disciple, Ria, can you imagine what a combination of French classical and Greek melos? Fantastic. Plus, Simon Trpčevski. There are no words that can describe this. What was also perfect for me that among the musicians on cello there was a Greek artist who I met at the Ohrid Summer Festival last year, and we discussed art. We forgot the problems between the two countries. When I entered the hall and took my seat in the Philharmonic, he waved with his hand to me and I recognized him. the last song that they performed, the conductor announced, it is a song from the northern part of Greece, which is very close to you. Yes, 7/8 rhythm, and the beat, which is very famous to us. I don't think that there is a greater success in bilateral relations than this one. So I want to finish. I think that you, must be inspired by the perfect examples of the Centers for Cultural Diplomacy, such as the French, Goethe, the British, Cervantes, the Institute from Japan, and so on and so forth, because they are very important. And if you ask me, what is one of the most beautiful moments in my term, I will say that a couple of days ago I was visited by the ambassador of the Emirates, resident in Rome, and we started talking. But I told him that I am a great fan of Emin Maluf, and I also told him that I teach about Ibn Khaldun, and also I told him that Edward Said, and also about the European imperialism and cultural. And the person said, sorry, but this is something that happens to me for the first time, and I'm hardly waiting to meet you again. This is something, in my opinion, dear friends, when I say cultural diplomacy, that can help us in transforming the society. And for me, such a Homo Balkanicus becomes Homo Europicus, not the one that only supports alliances or decides on activities which are very often military activities. Mother Teresa is from our country, so if she is most popular in your country, then it is logical that here we can find the real inspiration. All of you here today are the successors of the life path of the philosophy of Mother Teresa. And constantly in the talks with my European friends, I mentioned this. I also mentioned it to Mr. Macron. If you say that EU is a philosophy, not only a machinery or unfinished symphony without the Western Balkans, it sounds perfect, then I must remind you that philosophy without values and principles is impossible. Values and principles are embedded in your constitutional acts, and we need to respect them, to commit that you will obey respect the national and cultural identity of every nation, the integrity of every person, and this is the foundation of the European Union. Otherwise, it is again only an alliance, a unity in searching for power in the world. This was a very long remark from me, but I need such moments because it's such at such a case, even in this capacity, there is a chance for culture and for cultural diplomacy. Thank you, Madam President.